Well, hello people, and welcome back to part 3 of new Framewood, our early access Cities 2 series. So hope you're having a wonderful day. Today's gameplay is split between the beta build and a big update we actually got just before this video released. And that is basically what we've been told is to be the release version of the game. So please do enjoy some nighttime shots. Finally, nighttime is fixed. And another big news, autumn has been added to the game, which is enormous for me. I was a huge critic of not having a proper autumn mechanic, so we'll finally see some autumnal trees and see how that pans out as well. But otherwise, let's get into the gameplay, shall we? So at this point in the gameplay, we're around 80-85 hours played, and things are certainly becoming a little bit more familiar. And we're going to talk about some more of the simulation as well today. We'll kind of have a live play section a little bit later on in the video. And we'll answer some of your questions on how the simulation works, how the whole management aspect comes into it. So look forward to that a little bit later on in the episode. But we're going to be doing what is essentially my first ever downtown district in Cities 2 today. We're working with the rail yard, bringing it over to the other side of the river, because on the edge of town it kind of felt a bit just tacked on to what was currently there. So we're bringing it over into the downtown, actually taking inspiration from Pittsburgh again. Not that we're rebuilding Plaza, of course, but again using Google Earth, and I think that's something that I've stopped doing in Cities Skylines too. And it's definitely affected my playstyle. I think I've almost stopped using real life inspiration points, so it was fun getting back into Pittsburgh and checking out the bridge and the rail, and we'll do a cool interchange a little bit later on here as well. Of course, some sad news between our last Cities 2 video and this one is that the game has been delayed for console, which is a huge kick in the balls alongside an increase in required spec for PC. So a little bit of a shame that that's had to go down. I know a lot of people, including myself, are very unhappy about that, but we'll see what sort of state we launch in, I guess. But again, some shots here that just show off the power of orientation again, and kind of bringing different things into our design. We're going to start formulating this interchange here, and again, it's just another example of how fluid and amazing these new road tools are. You know, I'm not the best at building interchanges in CS vanilla, but the new road tools allow me to be better, and it only begs the question, you know what the other creators who are good at making these insane interchanges are going to be able to do. There's been some insane screenshots in our early access group, so really looking forward to seeing what everyone else can do with these road tools once they've just got more hours in Cities 2, and you guys as well. And don't forget, if you aren't in our Discord, it is linked down below, so do come and join us, ready to show off your Cities 2 builds or Cities 2 projects, whatever you want to come showcase in the Discord. Please do come and join us. You'll also see in today's gameplay as well how important it is that when you're playing Cities 2 in laying down these kind of big arterial networks that are going to manage a lot of your traffic, that terrain manipulation is super important now in Cities 2. Mentioned it a couple of episodes ago, but again, now I'm getting more hours in the game and more familiar with things, because the road tools are now so flexible and they'll go over a lot of different terrains. Really important that you prepare that terrain beforehand, otherwise things end up looking massively worse than if you don't. So that's definitely something to factor into your gameplay once you guys do get a hold of Cities 2, is work with your terrain first of all before you do anything else. It makes a world of difference, I've found, into your builds. You'll also notice something else that's changed, and this is the ever-evolving beta that we're playing, but they've added in just a green arrow, or red arrow if it's negative, for the population growth rates and the amount of money that you earn per hour. That was a really weird decision. I don't know why they did that. It was really useful to have that at a glance. Now you actually have to hover over it and it pops up as a little tooltip. Even on one of the official streams, they said that seeing the amount of money you earn per hour, it doesn't really matter, which I don't particularly agree with, to be honest. I think there's a big difference between earning plus $10 an hour to plus 3 million, you know?
And this is another change that happened since last week, that the arrows, now it's just indicated with like a stack of arrows either up or down, instead of having like an exact number. Obviously you can still see it if you hover over. I think I was talking to the devs yesterday, and the reason was that like generally you shouldn't, like you don't need to see the exact number, you just need to see the trend. And now you can see the trend, especially with, I would say, income. It's like, unless it's very close to zero, it doesn't truly matter that much, I would say.
It doesn't truly matter that much.
It's good to have that at first glance. So a little strange that has changed, but I know you guys always ask how are things evolving as time goes on. Again, doing more terraforming here. We brought in another couplet system. I'm obsessed with doing couplet systems now. The game has an inbuilt parallel road tool. It looks really great, and I was super happy with how this interchange turned out. You know, it's not totally omnidirectional, but it does provide slip ramps to get people back into across the river, across all this big rail infrastructure going underneath. Super proud of this one. You'll see various different shots of it as the video goes on today, and it continues to evolve. But now bringing in some of those transport networks, and we do some of this new embanking technique with the rail line now. It's going to flow through this suburb. This is the rail line that actually comes across the river from the train station that we set on last episode. And I'm really looking forward to just getting more familiar with trains, especially since now you can unlock them so early. That was definitely one of my biggest wishes from Cities 1, that was to have access to train lines early. Because if you've been watching my Thessia series, it's a train-only start. It is linked down below if you'd like to come and watch it. And it's really changed the way I think about playing cities, kind of establishing these smaller orbital towns around a major kind of metropolitan centre, and all having it linked in with rail first, and then thinking about road, and then maybe metro if it's appropriate. So I really enjoyed playing with rail of all things in Cities 2. I think you guys are going to really enjoy having it unlocked a lot earlier. It's definitely affected my playstyle. So we'll just bring this back into the old couplet system. Again, you can see here how I haven't prepared the terrain on this particular spot, and it's pretty janky, like you really have to work with it beforehand. So I do end up doing a little bit of reworking here and just making sure that it doesn't look like crap. Not that we're spending too much time over this side of the map, it's really just giving it a connection for the sake of the kind of showcase new Framewood city. We also end up building quite a bit of farmland out here as well to try and create a bit more of a authentic countryside, which those new kind of node drag and drop fields are incredibly useful for. And we'll get onto that build a little bit later in the video. But again, you can see how much terrain work I'm doing. Super important. But this part of New Framewood will continue to grow out. One thing I've noticed in cities, and this of course could just be exclusive to my city because of the way I've got things set up. Of course, there's so many variables that will affect zoning. But there's a lot more office demand in Cities 2 than there ever was in Cities 1. Again, the demands very much seem to be tied into education. So my suggestion would be, if you're kind of lacking any sort of demand in Cities 2, it's usually because you need to provide a level of education, be that elementary, high school, college or university. And I had all of my demands absolutely soaring. Every single bar was pretty much full. And with the inclusion of just the college level of education, I didn't have university actually down yet by the time that this episode will end. But we are now just expanding local road networks, and these little one-unit alleyways are really nice for developing just kind of smaller suburban areas. I've really enjoyed using those quite a lot, and we'll definitely do some more fun designs with those once we get into building our own kind of proper city. And there's one thing I'm really looking forward to doing as well when we actually get into our own build that isn't these kind of time-gated progression milestone cities for the early access program, is just slowing down. I've had to go so quickly and build so much in such a short space of time. It's it's kind of the total opposite to my playstyle. You know, you've really got to speed up when we're making these sorts of videos. But we are now placing down our first trams. You are seeing the first official OE tram activity here in Cities 2. And similar process to how we treat the rest of the roads with the bus lanes, you have to upgrade that base road template with a tram line, and then it just spins around, and you don't really get that issue anymore. We'll talk about it a bit later on in the live play, but you know, in Cities 1, when the nodes are too close together, they kind of like stagger through it and they don't properly flow. That seems to have totally gone now. You can be really tight and close with your nodes, and the game doesn't really bother too much. So we're just running this tram system from the train station in the middle of the town, down through the suburbs and down to the office park that now lies near that rail yard. And it just turned out really nicely. We actually ended up building a little custom bus plaza here later on, which is kind of my first. Almost kind of going back to thinking a little bit more modular with Cities 2, very much how we play Cities 1, you know, those kind of smaller intricate builds, thinking about asset positionings and, you know, what's going to fill this particular square rather than it just being zoning. So I definitely feel like I'm getting much more comfortable and much more familiar with Cities 2 as time goes on. And we also come in to add another elementary school here again as well, not only for just satisfying that level of education. Really didn't like the parks at the front as well. I ended up deleting those. But just for a chunkier asset, you know, just larger sort of asset orientations and positionings. We end up doing some low density housing here, but end up reworking it into high density later on. once people start complaining of high rent, and we also just want a little bit more density in that area, so some row housing comes in along with some towers as well. A little bit more mixed use up against the waterfront, and generally just watching the flow of cities too. We also start bringing across our first ever pedestrian paths here as well. I'm a big fan of these new pedestrian ways. There's kind of 3 covered ones alongside your very basic path, and they look really cool, a lot more modern. They're not super flexible, you can't do them in too long a stretch. We do another one opposite side of the bridge from here to link back to where the hospital will eventually be placed. But yeah, it kind of says like, oh, you cannot upgrade this, the segment is too long, so you do need to be quite particular with how you place these new pedestrian pathways. But I'm a big fan of them. They look really nice spanning over the arterials. You don't need to be as high off the ground anymore as you do in Cities 1 to get them to actually pop over the road. That kind of anarchy collision is a lot more forgiving this time around. They can't be curved into segments. You can see how they kind of become quite blocky if you try and curve them, which is actually quite a nice design. I actually wish I kind of kept that in hindsight now, watching the footage back, but I'm sure there's lots of really cool configurations you can do with these walking pathways, and we end up doing kind of a big triangle one with the suspension arch on them and just let them sort of flow around. It ends up looking really cool. And we can see our interchange starting to get a little bit more use now as well, with trains coming under it, which I just had to get that cinematic with the train. I really enjoyed that. So we'll now just continue to expand the local roads of the downtown setting, and we're definitely going to have a video on the channel probably when the embargo lifts about how to use these new road tools, kind of the cut and fill, the key walls or the road keys that everyone's been using, and all this kind of automatic retaining wall stuff that's now built into the road tools. And a big shout out to TDW in the early access group, who's really mastered these road tools already. It's been really helpful with everyone to try and get them right, and you can see how we work with them here, setting up different layers of elevation, and then you kind of cut off a different segment, bring it back down to the other one, and then because you've messed with the terrain, it now reads it as a retaining wall. It looks a little bit tricky to get used to at first, and admittedly it kind of is. But once you've got the hang of it, having that functionality built into vanilla CS2 road tools is a big plus. Retaining walls was something I felt was sorely missing from CS1. You always had to deal with that crap brown cliff texture. But we'll come in and grab the hospital now. Just lots of people complaining. You can see we're about to drop into the orange on our healthcare availability. So decided to go in and grab one of the big boy hospitals. And I'm really enjoying the new kind of tech tree development system. I think that's a really nice addition into City Skylines, and I'm looking forward to seeing how DLCs are going to expand upon that sort of development tree. You know, sort of what different themes and buildings are going to come in, and whether or not that affects kind of the meta progression, because I think there certainly is a meta to follow in that progression tree. We'll definitely probably have a video on it. And what I mean by the meta is just sort of the best things to unlock first. Like for me, it's definitely going to be you grab roundabouts and highways first of all, because just having those slip road functionalities and being able to drop in the roundabouts is really useful early on, then probably followed by something like trains, so you can start planning that in really early. But of course, you know, that's exclusive to my playstyle. People might enjoy unlocking something totally different first of all, so really looking forward to seeing how you guys kind of grasp that development tree as well. But the hospital ended up sitting really nicely atop the hill here, kind of opposite the river, making a big kind of song and dance again out of an important asset, you know, like we always do. So really enjoyed how the hospital sat on that river. We're going to bring the train station in now. Again, terrain work beforehand, just so we can prepare those slopes for where the train station will eventually sit on the ground here. Now, hopefully again, these gradients aren't going to upset the train police. Unfortunately, I can't get away with it now because the gradients are actually showing off in the road tools, so the train police will be able to tell whether or not it is an acceptable gradient to the exact degree, which I'm not sure is a good thing. But we'll wait and see, of course. Big shout out to the train police on the channel. I love you guys. So doing some more intercity train connections here again. Big fan of how you can now control those intercity connections. They're no longer just random. It's going to lead to a lot less stupid vanilla train traffic, I think. We also get the City Hall here as well from the sort of a city administration part of the development tree, the same thing that the welfare office is also a part of. We're just going to clear some space around some of the mixed use zoning in the hospital, kind of right in the middle of downtown Framewood on this side of the river, to accommodate this building. It's a really nice one, you know. I think The take-home point from me for Cities 2 is that your service assets and general kind of ploppable buildings are so much bigger in CS2. You've really got to kind of open up your mind to the size of the footprint that your cities are now going to be taking up. Everything's a lot bigger scale than it is in Cities 1. For example, you take this graveyard here that we're about to add the chapel to, compare it to the CS1 graveyard, and it's like maybe 4 or 5 times the size. And that runs for pretty much all the other assets as well. You know, your signature buildings, your hospitals, police stations, fire stations, everything's just so much bigger. And as a result of that, you've got a design on a much larger scale, I think, in CS2. At least that's been my experience with it. I'll be interested to see how you guys feel about that once you eventually get hold of the game. So we now come on to start placing some of our downtown service roads, and just touching on that point again of what I mentioned about how much larger the assets are. I think as a result of that, there's also now a need, which I imagine probably the workshop, if not a content creator pack or DLC at some point, is going to address, of just having smaller versions of those. Just a smaller fire station or a police station would be a big help. I was using the forest brush there as well for the first time, or the tree brush really, just to try and add a bit of dense forest between the current downtown and the highway. And I'm getting more used to the forest brush. I love that there's a tree brush included in the game now. I won't mention the prop line tool again, don't worry. I know you guys are sick of me talking about the prop line tool, so we won't mention it now. But yeah, a multi-tree forest brush would be really helpful. And there is actually also an option within your forest brush snapping options to delete just the trees selected with the brush, or delete every tree. So that's a really cool bit of functionality. Only thing now that would make that tool absolutely perfect for me would be to add in, I can place down multiple different types of tree at once. That would be perfect base game functionality for me. We're also going to grab the server farm here as well from our communications development tree. I've found that communications, Wi-Fi and post are really, really helpful for improving citizen happiness. They get a big buff from having a proper postal service available to them. And this server farm asset is gorgeous. I really like this asset here. I'm going to kind of isolate it on the island, as if it's some kind of like exclusive Silicon Valley sort of institute, I guess. And then you can see you can draw pathways off of the front of buildings now. And I do like the fact that on these main buildings, the bits that have, you know, roads on them, like as in an access to a car park, they actually have to have road access now. It does kind of take away that we can knock assets off the road like we could do in CS1, but that's gone now because the pipes under the road now. You really need that exact road connection, but it does lead to some more cool designs coming into play, I think. We'll see now a little bit more refinement of that retaining wall that we put in, because we're going to start drawing in the super pedestrian pathway here that we end up leaving as just a regular path, because it just says the segments are too long, but I'm sure if you did it sort of incrementally it would still be okay. But this pathway gets crazy busy towards the end of the video as well. You'll see some cinematics at the end of today's episode. So really happy to see that walking porn is still a possibility. It definitely, just because the simulation of the day is a lot slower, the sims, they don't scurry as much as they do in CS1, which isn't really something I realised that I missed. You know, I enjoy seeing sims scurry around, but yeah, they just, because the day is slower now and you kind of simulate and you know it's 20 past 6 or it's 6:30, whatever time it is. Just as a result of that, the sims walk a lot slower, so that's just a symptom of that sort of improvement to the simulation, I guess, but I'm sure I'll get over it. Nothing a quick time-lapse wouldn't sort out, I don't think. So we'll just come back to our arterial frames now left over from the downtown, bringing some bridges over, connecting into places that make sense from current existing road infrastructure. Just kind of give a nice rounded edge to New Framewood, because when you're building in this sort of video style, which is so different to my usual type of video, it does take some getting used to. So just trying to tie everything together. That does take us up to the small city milestone as well, where we actually unlock the high density offices, which are super tall towers alongside those high density residentials as well. So this will really start helping us form something of a skyline for New Framewood. And when it says high density in Cities 2, it means high density. There is a lot more taller towers now in the vanilla game. Something that wasn't really addressed in Cities 1 until we got the Skyscrapers content creator pack. But you'll definitely notice those big sort of spikes in height, if you like, for these high density stuff, especially high density residential and office. That's really where a lot of your towers are going to lie. Which I'm a big fan of, because that was, again, one of my biggest criticisms about CS2, is that there wasn't really any big chunky towers that weren't unique buildings. But that's definitely changed now, and of course they're only going to get bigger as they continue to level up as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the new improved and more diversified zoning system. There's a lot more different types of residential now, so you've not just got, you know, horrible chunky towers or small single family homes. There's a mix of apartments and row housing, and you've still got those towers and single family homes. So real big fan of the new zoning systems that have been introduced into CS. And you'll see some of these high density towers now, and we'll leave up a few stills of the city throughout the video as well. Today you'll see some sort of mini cinematics and just enjoy watching the city flow. I'm finding just enjoying watching the city a lot more than I do in CS1. I guess that's partly down to the sort of new and improved simulation. You're actually watching people go somewhere rather than just kind of scurry from A to B. So again, the more I kind of sit with the game and sit there watching it, I really do enjoy watching the city just tick over, if you like. So I'm just going to do some pretty simple greenbelt detail in here, some bush lines and trees and oaks and whatnot, and turns into a really nice park kind of nestled in between all the road networks. And it's nice just watching the city grow up. It's kind of takes some getting used to all the new assets, because, you know, we're just so familiar with CS1 assets, but I'm really happy with how this little mini skyline is developing, and the flexibility the new road tools now give us, integrated with a few service assets like a water tower or a rail yard. It really helps the mind kind of boggle, you know, about what is really possible with CS2. Really enjoy this shot here as well, with the elevated train line kind of running away from the land that's been terraformed up against as it comes against the river. And trains coming and going from my kind of central downtown station as well, and really factoring those layers of height already, you know, being careful with what zones lie where to create a proper formulated skyline, because it is very easy, I think, to still go ahead and properly mass zone in CS2. So we'll come into this little custom bus plaza that I mentioned earlier on in the video now, and I'm a huge lover of these little one-way bus only roads, something I felt was sorely missing from City Skylines 2. So it works exactly the same as the other bus stop things. We had to add our bus stops in first, and then you go back with the line and then decide, you know, where those buses will go and stop at. So I really like the new public transport functionality. Admittedly, as I said last episode, wasn't a huge fan of it at first. It did feel like public transport with extra steps, but you do get a lot more flexibility over where your lines do and don't go. So that's what we're doing. We're just running the bus line now up into the train station on that bus only road that's totally separate from the other roads. People can still walk on these, and then integrating it with a path network, a little bit of tasteful low density commercial, a office, well, not an office park, a little park, and then some simple bush lining. So what you are seeing here really is my kind of first thought process at what a possible little train and bus modular build interchange might look like. And yeah, so just kind of thinking about the game in this perspective makes me enjoy it a lot more, I think. You know, there's some things about the game I'm not overly happy about, but when they kind of come to realise the flexibility options that are now available with CS2, when we can do little things like this, like with a bus only lane, that wasn't there in CS1. It really does help kind of just improve the enjoyment of the game. Here we'll get some little bush linings in, and then watch a couple of buses move back and forth as well. And there's a little finished plaza once all the trees have grown up, so it turned out pretty nicely, I think. I'm a real big fan of this area. Again, I would have loved to have placed some of those benches and kind of garbage cans and lights myself, but one day that functionality is going to be there, isn't it? But really enjoy this cute little bus park that we made to help service the train station. We're now going to come into some of our kind of more countryside detailing. Mountain Village has a lot of fertile land kind of over in the west side of the map here on this really insane terrain. So I wanted to kind of get some kind of rolling hills, rolling green farm fields. As someone who lives very close to Yorkshire, this is a very familiar landscape to me. So wanted to see how easy it was to bring that in. There's also a ton of trees out here as well, so ended up doing some refinement and trying to use the new tree brush tool to create kind of a tree-lined field, you know, like we've been doing recently in Orchid Bay, for those that are following my vanilla CS1 series. So we're doing some vegetable farming. We do have a brief look at the production, but we'll have a look at the whole production chain a little bit later on in the video. But it's essentially this process, right? You look at your production, you can see you've got a deficit of vegetables, then the solution is to, okay, well, either increase your import facility to bring more vegetables in, or go ahead and make a farm that can grow its own vegetables, is kind of the extent of the gameplay you'll get out of the new production chain. And people will find varying different levels of enjoyment out of that, I imagine. But a huge fan of these little node fields. I definitely find when you bring it up against infrastructure, lots of nodes close together to get nice smooth curves. Otherwise they can end up looking a little bit blocky. But yeah, they're just a big improvement, aren't they? So much better than vanilla CS1's, CS1's Industries DLC farm fields. Total night and day difference. I'm really looking forward as well to seeing what the modders can also do with this new tool that's now in the game. I would love to also have a surface painter mechanic that uses this node tool to be able to say, okay, well, I want this particular area to be concrete or sand or rock. That would be game changing. I hope that that's possible in an update at some point. If not, I imagine the workshop will see to it. Which I do feel bad about, because I don't like saying, oh, it's fine, the workshop will fix it, because that kind of really neglects the vanilla player base, and especially the console player base. But of course now there is a Paradox mods option within CS2, so who knows what's going to come with that. Maybe that's not an argument that's really valid anymore. Guess it's going to be interesting to see how different Paradox mods are to Steam Workshop mods, isn't it? It'll be an interesting conversation, I think, when we get to that point. But more tree-lined fields here, more different kind of livestock and farm, and I think we use vegetables and livestock farms over here. Just to help get them in, but again, I really don't like the livestock farms. the random livestock buildings in the middle of what is quite an obviously ploughed field is a very stupid aesthetic. I really hope that that is patched or changed at some point during CS2's lifespan. So you'll see now that in our demand bars, we pretty much do not lose commercial, industry and office demand now for the rest of the video. It just stays so high, and I don't know whether again that's because I play so slowly, or just because of the way my taxes are configured, or the way that education is kind of built in and around the city. I'm not entirely sure. It's going to take a little bit more experimentation, I think, to find out exactly what contributes to those demands staying so high, but office demand is crazy through the whole city. It never drops away. We're going to carry on drawing out some more bridges here as well. I do end up actually downgrading this into the 2-lane bridge. I think it's a little bit more appropriate for kind of crossing a big mountain gully like this. I'm actually quite looking forward to doing kind of a Northwest American inspired build for CS2 at some point, with the new road tools and the bridges and how the trains work now. I don't know why, but Northwest America kind of speaks to me here. Doing some more slip lanes off of this couplet system. You can see how everything interacts with one another. Really seamless. None of this you cannot place this here bollocks. It's all absolutely wonderful to play and follow. Love the new road tools. I really cannot champion them and get excited about them enough for you guys. But you know, working with some lane maths, just creating simple kind of interstate city sort of slip road connections. Much more flexible now. I've kind of felt in CS1 we almost always gravitated towards a roundabout. Not anymore with CS2 now. So this is the bridge in, again looking at a bit more fertile land, checking our production chain to see what's needed. We can see we've got a little bit of demand for vegetables and livestock and cotton. So ended up saying, okay, well, let's do some cotton farming then. And we'll have a little, like I said, we'll look at this sort of production chain in the live play section that's not too far off in the video now. So we'll kind of spend the second half of today's video in live play looking at sort of the production menus and different heat maps that are now available in the game. There's quite a few new ones, so for those that really enjoy the data and all the numbers behind the simulation, I think you're really going to enjoy how CS2 handles that. It's a lot more in depth and a lot more customized than it was in CS1. So for the data nerds and the simulation lovers, you're definitely going to get a lot more enjoyment out of it in CS2, I think. There is a little gripe here during this gameplay, is the fact that you can't have the bridge pillars within the middle of a field, which is really annoying. There's several examples of that near where I live in the UK, especially around kind of West Yorkshire way. But you know, anarchy I think is needed for that, isn't it? But after all this building, we finally head towards our second winter, and I'll leave some sort of nice wintry shots of New Framewood as the city's grown up over the start of today's episode. let me know what you think of how downtown New Framewood is developing. Honestly, as a first attempt at a high density area in CS2, I don't think it's too bad at all. You definitely have a lot less control over how your skyline looks now, and this is solely down to one reason, and that is the fact that the historical building option is now gone from the game. I don't think that's going to come back in for release either. I think we would have heard about that by now. But again, I hope that that's going to be added in during a free update, because you know, we all know how important asset selection is, and I'm sure there is plenty of ugly assets within City's pool. You know, they can't all be absolute bangers. But on the flip side of that, you know, I want to be able to sort of leave a building looking the way it is if it fits into my skyline. At the minute, you've no control over that. Everything will go to level 5 and you have no choice or sort of no say in the matter, which is really annoying. So reforming a little bit of that low density we did earlier. Turning off the road snapping options for assets is now super useful for getting to fit into the spaces that you want. Again, some of these tower cranes are a little bit too much. Again, an animation I think that could be doing with being tweaked. And then also providing more office demand, a little bit of car parking, a bit more of a kind of a downtown hub within the inner city. With some row housing against the highway, I don't think it turns out too badly at all. We did also grab the wastewater treatment plant here as well, which you haven't seen on camera. Again, there's too much footage to include, but just to help increase that water processing capacity. And then we finally also upgrade to a big boy city and get our own power plant, because up until 21,000 people, we have actually been importing our own power from the outside connection. So we now have the geothermal plant, which is a really nice looking asset. It's really great up against the highway. And then also connecting that into the outside power connection again, so we can continue to export those goods. So welcome to a bit of live play New Framewood, everyone. Fortunate enough, just as I was about to record this, we had an enormous car crash. So this guy has actually managed to land on his bonnet. He's currently in flames, whilst the post fans and everyone else around him kind of all goes looking a little bit tipped up for him, hasn't it, in that smart car. But there's an example of the car crash. So I'd actually recorded this before this recording in full, but Paradox dropped a 46GB update to the game, which essentially made that pre-recording pretty useless. So we'll just kind of go over some of the major things that have been changed here. So you'll see now New Framewood's growing up. We're getting some higher level mixed use here now. Here's a level 3 mixed use building. Pretty nice, isn't it? I do sort of like them as they level up. Definitely find as your assets level up, they get much better looking. In particular, the low density residential here. What's this one? Level 5. Yeah, so this one here's a level 5, right? Really nice looking house. So first up on this big list of changes that has now happened, a lot of it's general bug fixes, but the nighttime perspective has now been fixed. It was extremely buggy beforehand, but of course we are still in a beta. Although we have been told that this patch that we're on now is much closer to the release version, so basically what you're seeing in the second half of this video is what you guys can expect to be playing with. But yes, we can finally enjoy some nighttime shots. I do really enjoy the new lighting, because we all know how much we enjoy a nighttime sort of view on the channel, right? It's all very nice, isn't it? Yeah, really kind of nice ambient lighting, I think, from the nighttime perspective. It still does look quite bright, I think, for nighttime, but there's also no kind of mouse cursor light, if you like, so I think that's just to help with building in the nighttime. But again, you can kind of get more of an impression for the nice lighting against this graveyard here. It says, unfortunate that there's no lights on the pedestrian pathways. That would have been nice for creating park spaces, wouldn't it? But yeah, you can get a sense for the nighttime lighting here. It's pretty nice. It's nice to be actually able to see nighttime for once. So we'll certainly include some nighttime cinematics for the end of the video here today as well. I was also going to show you guys a little bit of the economy, but as of the most recent update, it's kind of bugged and not particularly working correctly, which is a real shame, because what I had recorded was kind of showing you how things work, but you can see now we're on 87.5 here, and we are making a current loss, but we're still going up in money, 87.56, 0.57 now, so that's bugged, so I can't really show you the economy, unfortunately. But what we will do is take a look at a few of the new heat maps, which I know you guys are quite interested in. So looking at the new heat maps now, you can come to residential, and it's going to highlight any possible ground pollution sources, which is nice. It also highlights the roads for roads that are suitable for residential zoning. So pretty similar to Cities 1. You don't want it right in your industrial heartland down in the bottom left here. But the rest of the city, inner city, downtown, suburbs, is all great for residential. The commercial heat map is quite cool, so you actually have a customer's heat map here now as well, which is this green colour, or green and orange that we can toggle on and off. But the more green it is, the higher concentration of customers, so if you're looking to zone up commercial and you want to know where people are living and where customers are focused around, then you want to be zoning up your commercial within these dark green areas. It's a pretty useful heat map, that one. Coming into industrial again, it's kind of the opposite of residential. You don't really want it in and around your town centres where the commercial is or where your residential is. You want to sort of keep it away outside of town. It's business as usual for industrial, really. And then office can pretty much go anywhere. You can put it in the city, the suburbs, the industry. Office is pretty flexible with where you can put it over here. Are you guys also interested in seeing the population breakdown for New Framewood? So currently, after all of this time, we have 28,000 people in now. There's our birth rates and moved in and moved away. We have 16,399 jobs with 16,333 employed people, which gives us a 13.4% unemployment rate from total population, which is very high. But my playstyle, I'm not particularly paying attention to all these demands down here. You can see we've got crazy commercial, industrial and office demand in New Framewood. So once I zone up some of those, you can expect this unemployment rate to come down a little bit. Let's also check out the traffic as well. So this was something I never really paid that much attention to be totally honest. In Cities 1, I found the traffic flow percentage to be quite meaningless. It would often highlight roads as very, very red, but once you got down there, it was actually fine. So didn't really translate for me, but of course there's rush hours to bear in mind now as well in Cities Skylines. So it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon right now. There's going to be a rush hour in about an hour's time. So let's have a little look here. So you can now differentiate your heat map between traffic flow and traffic volume. The volume just changes the roads to purple, purple being very high volume. So you can see our roundabouts here in our main bridge across into the city is pretty purple. And our traffic flows are, supposedly toward the bad end of the spectrum here with all this orange, aren't they? So I'll do what I did in Cities Skylines 1. Let's come right down here onto one of these orange roads together. There we go. This one's almost a little bit red there, isn't it? So we'll get in here and then we'll just pop off this info view here. And this again, apparently, according to Cities Skylines, is a place of bad traffic. It's not, is it? It's absolutely fine. Of course, you have to bear in mind that there are rush hours now, so we'll hang around till 5 o'clock and wait till the rush hour comes through. And again, traffic volume, I guess they're more kind of indicators, I think, now, rather than kind of gospel information, if you like. You can just see, there's a lot of pedestrian crossings here, or a lot of pedestrians crossing, as well as actual pedestrian crossings, so I think it is just a volume, but again, it's showing us we've got, what's that, 70% traffic flow. It gets slightly better at midnight, apparently, which doesn't make much sense to me. You think it would get significantly better in the night time. So again, we've just had a big update. How accurate and working this is up for debate. But we'll hang around till 5 PM, which is actually about to be right now, isn't it? So that'll be the start of the rush hour when everyone starts to leave work and whatnot, and we can just enjoy people flow around this junction here. Hopefully the rain isn't making any of you sick. I know I've had a few comments about how the rain effect is a little weird in Cities 2, but I don't mind it personally, I think. So, according to those heat maps we were looking at, this is a red junction in the city. It is busier. You can definitely see it's getting a little bit busy now. That rush hour is kicked in because people are coming to and from work, finishing and whatnot. So that's pretty cool to see proper rush hours in the game. I do like the fact that roads do get busier around kind of 6 and 5 o'clock now. Oh, 6 AM and 5 PM rather. So yeah, those are your traffic ones. We'll go as well to another purple section of the city. Let's head over here to this very purple roundabout, which has good, well, decent enough flow. I wouldn't say good, it's in the middle of the spectrum there, isn't it? But very high traffic volume. You can see here that, I guess, yeah, it does have traffic volume. So I guess the traffic volume is a little more accurate to me than flow, because, this is still yellow. We can find another area here. Let's go for, this one bit down the street is apparently orange, but it's fine, isn't it? So you can take as much or as little from those traffic info views as you like, really. It's sort of up to you as to how much they mean to you and your city. I've also seen quite a few people as well comment that there is kind of significantly less traffic on the roads. I've definitely noticed, just as new Framewood's growing up and playing a couple of other builds that we've done some work for over the Cities 2 kind of launch project, is that you really need to get to at least 5-figure population numbers now before you start to see like a decent amount of traffic and sims walking around on the road. You definitely don't get as much scurrying, I would say, as you do in CS1, just because the simulation is so much slower and I guess more true to life now as well. You can see we're getting people waiting at our bus stops down the bus road now. But besides that, yeah, I would say it definitely feels quieter, but that could also be because you're looking at the roads when it's a quiet time of day. You know, it could be 3 AM when all your sims are being simulated being sleeping. So again, I think there's so many variables into it as to why there's so little traffic on the roads, but I think there definitely is. But once you get to these high population numbers, like we say, you know, new Framewood's 28,000 now. It's just getting busier. So, you know, I wouldn't worry too much about that. You definitely do get traffic. We'll head into the inner city as well. Like, the roads definitely do feel quieter, I would say, but you see how many people are walking here. So many more people choosing to walk in CS2 than they do drive, which I guess is good. And this is probably an excuse actually to bring a bus line across this bridge, if anything, isn't it? But I'd definitely say things feel quieter earlier on in the game than they do in CS1. But in terms of people's concerns about, oh, there's not enough traffic on the roads, or it generally just feels a lot less quieter. It does at the start, but wait till you get to high populations, and I don't think you'll be really experiencing that problem anymore. And you certainly can get traffic jams. We've been sharing a lot of screenshots together in the early access group, where people have managed to create significant chunks of traffic. So don't worry about that, you will still have traffic to fix. So Overcharged Egg is extremely excited to announce that fall trees have been added into the game, which is an enormous thumbs up for Colossal Order. This was criminal that this was missing from the seasons mechanic, and it was actually announced that the game was coming without seasons and autumnal trees, but they have added them in at the final hour, it would seem. So a big thumbs up for that. We'll head over to some of our central park spaces. There's no kind of falling leaf animation yet, if you like, or pile up of leaves on the ground. But at least they're in, right? That's what we care about. So a huge fan of that. It's also not applicable to every tree, so kind of your pines and conifers aren't going to change colour, which is very respectful of the tree, of course. So happy to see that you are going to get mixes of green and orange up on the hillside there. So it's really, really pretty. I'm a big fan of autumnal trees back in CS2 now. Yes, please, for that, everyone. So there's not really too much else I can discuss about the simulation. Like I said, this big update has just kind of really messed everything up, so there's not too much to explain. I can do anything I would say here really about the simulation and all the new kind of process stuff. Wouldn't really matter because, as you saw, we're losing a lot of money, and actually up to like 126 million now, so it's totally bugged with the latest update, but hopefully that's going to be fixed on release anyway. But otherwise, as for this latest 46GB update, big thumbs up for autumnal trees coming back in. They were sorely needed for the seasons mechanic to actually feel like seasons, and it's nice to have a working nighttime shot again. Otherwise, guys, that is going to do it for our coverage of Cities Skylines 2 in its early access beta stage. And once our content embargo does lift, we will be having a live stream where we can have a little bit more of a hands-on Q&A and give our honest opinions on Cities Skylines 2 once it's in its release form, which it will be when we start streaming. Really happy to see autumn trees added in right at the end of its development. That was definitely needed, so big thumbs up for that. I've been pretty honest and open with my thoughts and feelings on Cities Skylines 2, I feel, over the course of this 3-part series. And it's been really interesting to read and listen to all your guys' comments and feedback and suggestions, as well as about how the game needs to evolve. It definitely still has a distance to go yet. The optimization update is kind of the next one we're all waiting for, I think. Now, hopefully the change in spec that was announced. Obviously, we haven't really spoke about that either, really, since the start of the video, have we? A real shame that the spec was increased. I don't think that's usually ever a good sign when that happens so close to release, but fingers crossed, we'll see what happens, of course. Either way, I hope you've enjoyed our time in New Framewood. Would probably stream this city, I think, rather than starting a new one, and just do some cute little builds around it before a main series starts on release, I imagine. And then we'll also do some fun bits and pieces with tutorials and fun videos as well once the embargo lifts. Please do enjoy your cinematics. As always, a massive shout out to all the patrons. You guys are a real secret blend of herbs and spices. And a big shout out to Felix Wilkinson. You guys are the best. Appreciate all the support. But otherwise, enjoy your farewell cinematics for New Framewood. Let's thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you when our embargo lifts. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day.